checker. This is Bebop Talks Cancer, and I'm here with Radwah Oda. I hope I'm saying that correctly, and um, really just here to talk about your story and a little bit of Bebop stuff on the creative side, and really just connect with people and bring this dialogue together. So, tell me about yourself. Tell me about your story.
So my name is Radwah. I got diagnosed with stage 4 colorectal cancer in August 2021. Um, when I discovered that I had colorectal cancer, it was in the ER room, which isn't really typical for most people. So it's been a crazy journey. So I've been diagnosed for a year now. So
And so you were in the ER room for something totally different.
no, so I was in the ER room because I wasn't feeling well. I was vomiting and not couldn't keep anything down, and that was, I think, my like sixth or seventh time in the ER room with the same symptoms.
Wow.
And finally, towards the end, they did a CT scan, and that's when they discovered
Mhm.
that I had tumors in the colon and then over 20 tumors in the liver. So
So colorectal, I think that a big part of these is like, I'm not a scientist. And I hear all these podcasts where everybody's like, this is what, every, like all the science stuff behind it. So can you tell us a bit and tell me a bit about like, how does that affect your body? Do you know about those things, or have you like kind of chosen? I know for my cancer, I was like, I don't want to know, get it out of me, you know, um, how that kind of went.
so it's funny because a lot of people are like, well, did you have any symptoms
Hmm.
before you went to the ER room? And I did. I
Hmm.
had a few symptoms. And at 30 or at 29, you're not thinking like, oh, this is cancer, because colorectal cancer symptoms are very mild. If you want to say, so you wouldn't expect it to be cancer. I had a few symptoms. I was bloated, loss of appetite, uh, change in my bowel. So it was a lot of small symptoms that you wouldn't realize that, oh, hey, this might be cancer, especially with what my lifestyle. I was very healthy. I was working out 5 days a week. I
Hmm.
was pescatarian for over a year. Then I went vegetarian for a few months. So you wouldn't think someone with my lifestyle, also using home homeopathic,
Hmm.
body products, products. You wouldn't think someone living, this lifestyle would get cancer, but
Right.
unfortunately that was it. So I never really went to the doctors. I wasn't really concerned 100%. I did mention it to my primary doctor, some of my symptoms, and she didn't seem really concerned. So I kind of just blew it off until obviously I was in the ER room. So,
Just wild. It is
right.
it is so crazy, like how cancer affects healthy people, sick people. Like
Yeah,
you could be a smoker all your life and never get it. You could
exactly.
be working out 5 days a week and get it, and it is wild in that way. Um, so where are you as we're speaking now? Where are you in? Are you still in treatments? Where are things at?
Yeah. So right now, currently, I'm still doing chemotherapy.
Hmm.
Um, when I first started chemo, there was over 20 tumors in the body. Now there's about 5 more tumors left.
Hmm.
So I'm chemo. It's stable right now, so I'm not sure what's going to be my next move. Just have a CT scan in October to see what my body wants to do next.
Right. Right. It's so
You know how
wild.
depends on how the tumors are reacting to chemo and what the doctors, and new studies are always coming out with
Hmm.
new clinical trials. So we'll see what the next chapter is. But currently, yeah, I'm doing chemotherapy.
Okay. And where are you located? I guess I should have asked that earlier.
So I currently live in Houston,
Hmm.
uh, but my treatment is in New York City. So I actually have to travel every other week to go
Really?
to Manhattan for chemotherapy, because there's a new medicine, I want to say, or a new way to get chemo. And they only do it at MSK in New York City. Unfortunately, they don't do it at MD Anderson in Houston, so I have to travel. I
And it's like
know.
you have a life, right? Like you're like,
Yeah, I still work full time.
mm-hmm,
And I have a 10-year-old daughter that I am a single parent, still taking care of her. So it's just me and her.
mm-hmm,
Lucky for me, though, I do have my parents that help whenever I do travel. But
mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm very busy. I don't think I really have much free time right now.
Right.
So
That's so wild. Like you're traveling a few thousand miles, is it, to like save your life? And it's like, yeah.
basically, yeah, 3.5 hours one way every other week. I mean, if you want to, 7 hours every other week traveling just to, yeah, keep me alive, because that's what they're basically doing. What chemo does is basically, hopefully kills the tumors or
Hmm.
stabilize and to keep me alive longer. So yeah, that's just the reality of it.
I was wondering, and it's like funny, I'm disclaimer to anyone who ever listens to these, like I am not a professional, right? And so I always like will have to jump around on topics and topics, but can you tell me like what was it like? And I know I have my own feelings on it because I've been there. Like to hear those words, like you've got cancer, and especially being like young, and
Yeah.
and then and if I can add one more, like busy, like because I know for me, I was like, oh, no, I'm like way too busy to have cancer right now. Like this is, like,
But for real though, right? It's and when you're young, and like when I was diagnosed, I was single, so it's like I'm 30. When I was diagnosed, I was 30. So once you find out that you have cancer, it's a surreal moment, right? It's
mhm,
kind of like your out of body experience, because it's like, is this real? Is this really me? I'm too young. I have a life. I'm a mom. I'm single. I'm dating. I'm out here enjoying, dinner. So
mhm,
that can't be real. It took me a little bit to really come in terms that I'm a cancer warrior. So
mhm,
yeah, no, it definitely is a very out of body experience, in my opinion.
mhm. And so now it's like, a big thing I know is like people don't have, because there's so many types of cancer. I think because there's so many types of cancer, because there's so much, like it's not misinformation or disinformation. I feel like it's because there's so much information. Like what was it like telling people you have cancer? I mean, because did you go to the hospital alone when you were you there alone when you found out?
Yeah, I was by myself when I found out,
Mm-hmm.
and the first person I called was my cousin,
Mm-hmm.
she's best friend, soul sister, and at that moment it was still kind of surreal, and everyone was like, "Well, they haven't confirmed anything yet. It's not true. It's
Mm-hmm.
not happening." People really didn't believe me when I told them at first, and they dismissed what was going on, and they dismissed my my symptoms, because it was hard for people to believe, someone that they love is going through something like this. So,
Mm-hmm.
and and especially when you find out by yourself, it was definitely a very lonely moment,
Sure.
probably the loneliest moment in my life. So,
Segue to lonely, like how has it been since? So I guess it's been almost a year, or a little over it's almost a year, and um, now how do people kind of like talk to you about it? Or I mean, obviously, like for those who don't know, you post your story. You've been incredibly open, and like, and I guess if you can kind of dual answer those questions, like did you make a decision to be so open about your story, or is it like, I don't know if we can cuss on these, but is it kind of like f that, like I just have to let this out? And um, and then also how has it been with those same people? Have you noticed, because I think that's important for someone who may be listening to this and like gets cancer or is interested in that experience, like is there kind of, does it stay the same, or has it kind of grown?
so when I first discovered that I have stage 4 colorectal cancer, I was posting it mainly on TikTok and Instagram, kind of venting,
Hmm.
blogging about my experience. Um, And a lot of people reached out to me. They kind of, sometimes people dismiss it, and it's okay. And then some, because it's hard to really discover what's going on. And but when I go out in public, most of the time I don't tell people. Whenever I meet people, and then they'll message me later like, I didn't know that you had, that you're going through this. It's crazy that I saw you and
Hmm.
you look healthy and you're happy. Like, you just never know what people are going through. So it really just depends. Sometimes when I am out and I meet people, 9 out of 10 times, I don't tell them that I'm going through this journey. Just because when you do tell people, it's the energy in the room
Oh yeah.
change so much, because when you bring up cancer, it's sad. It's sad. So
Hmm.
9 out of 10 times, I don't want to bring that. It's not negative because it's reality, but I don't want to bring people down. So I don't really like talking about it much. And even when I'm around my friends, I don't like talking about it much, because
Hmm.
sometimes I feel like I'm protecting them more than I'm protecting myself. Because once I start talking about my cancer journey, people start getting upset. And that's the last
Yeah.
thing I now. It's people getting upset and crying or being depressed over what I'm going through. So I kind of try not to talk about it as much, but
Hmm.
I do post about it a lot. So it's different when I talk to people face to face than me just making a video or writing something and then posting it and then kind of just not really having to talk about it again, you
Hmm.
know?
And not to like promote like every cancer patient has to communicate, because it's funny, like do all this now. When I had cancer, I like thought about it and I was like, nah, I'm just gonna sit here for a while. And that was me. And then like
Yeah.
as I kind of grew into Bebop, like I I I didn't even search out the community when I was originally doing chemo and everything. But it's like amazing how that community, kind of like what you just said, like has like formed around you. And I mean, I'm sure that somewhere there's haters, which is so weird. I'm sure, because
It,
just because you're on the internet and like there's haters, but like,
like,
you
how can
know,
you hate her, but whatever.
I know it's weird, and it's funny because like I feel like that's why this type of communication and talking about it in this way, like, I don't think we have to have these organized conversations. I think you don't have to have these like, here are the 5 questions that you need to answer so that everyone knows. Like I think that, people ask me like, what is Bebop? And I try to tell people all the time, I'm like, well, just because you have cancer doesn't mean you can't have a human experience. Like
Yeah.
all of a sudden you're like perpetually sick mentally,
Yeah.
physically, but it's like,
Sick.
there are like, there's so many different levels to it. There's terminal cancer. There's
Yeah.
people who are, in the beginning, you don't know. Even for me, when I was diagnosed, they're like, this should work. And I'm just like, all right, this should work, But then as things progressed, it did work. But in the beginning, they don't know.
Yeah.
And it's like, it can be incredibly scary. And like
Yeah.
you said, like you have had and do have a support system. And I think that it's amazing to see what the cancer community is, because a lot of people don't, and um, and even like us, to give context, like we met over DMs, and just in this internet world of having this shared experience.
Yeah.
And so let's slide into some of the Bebop topics, which Bebop hovers over this, like, I sometimes call Bebop like a secret like complaint department, because that's what we need, like, as cancer patients, survivors, nurses, doctors. Like, the more we complain, the better it gets. Very
I-
much so. Like, I don't know if you had this experience, but like, my mom would always say like the squeaky wheel is the one that gets fixed first. And like, kind of like, you have to, like, if you got a problem, like, you have to put it up there, like. And I'll ask later about insurance and finances, because I think people should know. But like, you know, what are some of the like flaws to the experience, or like, Bebop's all about bringing creativity into the space, but it's a tough, it could be a tough question. Like, what have been kind of like design flaws or things you think, is there anything you think that could have been better throughout the experience in that way?
Through like like from the start of me being diagnosed to where I'm at right now, what's like a flaw that I see is what you're asking.
Yeah, sure. Let's start there. It's a tough question. And it kind of grows
It
from
really
there.
is. My first thing I would want to bring up is doctors having not as much compassion.
Mm,
And I completely understand. I respect doctors. I respect what they do. They do go through a lot and they see patients throughout the day, and it's a sad story every single time. But sometimes, especially in the beginning when I was diagnosed by a doctor, my GI doctor that did my colonoscopy, when he spoke to me after my colonoscopy, it was just the words he said kind of still triggers my head. And I mean, it still, lingers in the back of my head. And it hurts what he said. So sometimes I feel like doctors really need to learn how to speak to patients and be able to communicate correctly and explain things correctly. Because sometimes I'll go into the office and they'll explain something to me, and I'm like, I don't know what you're saying.
hmm
And I feel like because you don't know what you're saying, they don't want to help you as much. So it's kind of battling, trying to save your life. And sometimes these doctors, they don't, if you're not asking questions or chasing them, then sometimes they don't care because they have so many patients. That's a flaw I would say has been upsetting from the beginning. But
hmm And kind of like you're feeling sick, and the only thing you can do is chat live support.
yeah,
Like you can only
or
like send them a message on
or
your portal.
sick. I'll be like, I'm not feeling this. Like I'm really nauseous, and they'll be like, still. I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
I experience. They're like, well, that doesn't happen often. I'm like, well, I don't know what to tell you. It's happening
Right.
to me. Like, it is what it is, right?
hmm
But I mean, that's why we do bring it up, and we have to talk about it and kind of put a red flag like, hey, this isn't right.
hmm And so, in your experience so far, and like obviously, like because of all the sharing you've done, because of all the communicating you've done, and building up such a network, like, do you feel as though do you feel as though there's a lot of change that needs to happen, or is there, you know, I mean, taking out like bedside manner is such a strange thing because some doctors are super cool and you're like, do you
Mhm.
really know your stuff? Like, or are you just cool? And then, or there's like nurses that are just like the best, right? And yeah,
They're
and
so underrated.
would you speak to that a little bit? Would you talk about like, because I feel like some people I didn't know until I got sick how
Nurses are
amazing nurses are.
honestly, like, I want to say every nurse that I've had to deal with at MD Anderson or MSK have been so pleasant, and they don't understand sometimes when we get a bad news. I've been frustrated at the hospital, and I've taken my emotions out on a nurse, and they're with so much compassion they'll come and ask about you and make sure that you're okay. And I'm gonna cry. I don't want to cry. The
Go
compassion they
for it.
show patients, especially when you go through chemo and you're by yourself, and you could just feel the empathy that they have and the love, and that's what we need. We need
hmm
people to kind of pat our backs and be like, we don't know what you're going through, but I'm here for you. I had a doctor my first, I mean, not a doctor, I'm sorry, a nurse, my first chemo session. They give you hospital socks. She gave me, she was about to hand them to me, and then she's like, you know what, let me put them on for you. And I was like, no, I got it. And she's like, no, let me put them on for you. And that little, like, kindness that she gave to me, like, I still remember it. And it's just those little things really do matter to us,
hmm
bringing water and making sure that we're okay, even if that's not their job, or putting socks on me. That's not her job. Her job as a nurse is just to give me my chemo, make sure I'm okay, and that's it. But they always go above and beyond.
It's
So I
so
love.
it's so weird. It's weird. It's like
They don't get paid enough.
no, they don't. I mean, I don't know how much. That's the thing is like I don't know how much they're supposed to get paid because what they deal with, like they must have those beeps when they sleep. They must hear beeping,
The
like
tra- I'm
just like
traumatized from those.
I know it's very real. Um, let's talk decor. The like, okay, so a big thing with Bebop, we want to do murals. We want to bring color into those spaces, and
Yes.
like I always tell people like the place I did my chemo wasn't in a hospital. It was in this like shopping center or like where you'd go see your therapist style building. Like there were offices for other companies in the building, right? But it was, outside of Atlanta. You leave Atlanta and you're in the South, right? But the what was like the how did like the decor make you feel?
Sick.
Mm-hmm.
It's, when you're going to see a doctor, for your CT scan or you're going for chemo, I understand you're going into hospital setting,
Mm-hmm.
you need beds, but sitting in that hospital bed is just right when you walk in. I get PTSD where I start tasting chemo and I just start feeling sick. There's not that much light. The furniture is old. There's not that many plants. It's just sad and gloomy right when you walk in, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the last thing as any cancer warrior or survivor needs, is to walk in and feel like they're walking into a hospital. We
Mm-hmm.
already feel sick throughout the day, almost every single day or every day. So it's like the last thing you want is to, you want to be somewhere where it's comforting and you feel like you're at home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely when you're constantly feeling sick, it's tough to appreciate the little things. But then when things happen, good things happen, or even just like those in between moments, like you really remember them. Like with the socks, like it meant you you're a year away from that, and you're still talking about it because it's still something you take forward. Um,
Hmm.
it's so
And I
funny.
still remember, and
Hmm?
I still remember her.
Her
All the
name.
nurses who knew me really, really well, I still remember all their names.
Hmm. So okay, I have a couple of questions. I know we're uh, running on time to try and get it around. The Were there any like design flaws in your experience? And I'll give you an example for me is that uh, they had the plugs for the ground came up out of the ground. So people would be pulling their chemo bags around and like hit things. Or like we had chairs in the way. You had to maneuver around to get into the bathroom at the place we had. There was like a
Yeah.
lip. You had to lift up your chemo bag to get into the bathroom. I mean, and then once you're in the bathroom, you're like you're like working at Radio Shack. You're like pulling cords around and
Was gonna be my complaint. So the two complaints I would have is not having a when you're having to drag that chemo pump with you, that chemo little, you know what I'm talking about,
there's
that
a
little
word for it. I don't know what
oh,
it
pole.
is.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
I know, I don't know the pole, the chemo
Yeah,
pole.
the chemo pole.
Like you're grabbing it and like lugging it around. First of all, it starts hitting your foot if you're not lugging it correctly, and
Hmm.
then you walk in the bathroom and like you could barely move because the bathroom's so tiny. And then there's no seat covers in the bathroom. Why are there no seat covers in the bathroom at a at a hospital? That's like the first place we need to have seat covers is in the hospital. Why? The amount of money that is in the medical field that they cannot buy seat covers in the hospital, they have seat covers in the airport. If the airport can afford seat covers, so can hospitals. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me.
It's such a simple complaint.
Yeah, and it's not decor, but that was one of
No,
the
no, I mean I let's start at the bottom, if no pun intended, but it's like so perfect. It's just a perfect example. I mean, how much could that possibly cost? And the fact that you have to think about that is is crazy. It
yeah.
doesn't really make sense. Like, and it's funny too because I don't think that there's like a form there. Like, how was your experience? Like, you know,
Isn't.
1 to 5, how was your like seat covers on the toilet? Did you experience that? But it's so true. It's like you're, you know, you're there not to be sick, but you're actually there to not be sick. You're there to get better. And, you know, there's these small things, like you said, like, and none of us are prepared for it. You're not prepared for the problems of the chemo pole. You're not
Yeah.
prepared for, I don't, did you have a port?
Yeah, I have a port.
Okay, so like, you're not prepared for, a big thing for us. We want to do functional products like the clothing, you know.
It's so hard to find something to wear to chemo
Hmm.
that's comfortable, that you don't have to like pull your shirt down to for the pump. And then also I have a little clinical, like, a little pump in my stomach, so it's having functional clothes as a
Hmm.
cancer patient is not easy.
Hmm.
It really isn't. Trying to find something comforting and cute and that makes sense.
Comforting and cute. Now that
Yes.
is, yes,
Yeah. Just because you have cancer doesn't mean you can't be cute.
that's like the tagline. Just because you have cancer doesn't mean you can't be
Ex-
cute. So okay. Segue to, you are a woman who has cancer, and or a person who has cancer. In some ways, when it comes to these medical terms, like, how do we describe that? But for me, like, part of the experience was I was one of the youngest people in the place. Right, I'm 27. I can get up and out of my chair. I have like four screens around me and Cheez Its and iced coffee, and I'm chilling. But if they needed to get to like my chest to get to my port, I'll just take my shirt off. Or,
yeah.
I'll just, oh, this is just another t-shirt to me. I'll just pull it down and there we are. And even for me, I was like, this is pretty stupid. There's got to be a better way to get to here. But then, especially for women, like, you don't want some 25-year-old nurse reaching her hand down your shirt, like, and it's strange because, and I'll disclaim for anyone listening, like, this is, we're talking about medical stuff because we can't say the S word. Like, we are talking about real things that really happen. We're not talking about like we're talking beyond feelings, but physical realities. And if you are have any kind of chest, or if you have any kind of, and even two feelings, if you have an insecurity, let's say, about, you know like, the way your body is at all, it is really uncomfortable showing any part of your body. And we're not even talking hair yet. We didn't even get to hair. But, you know, can you talk about that at all? Is that okay?
Yeah, of course. And it is, especially after when I had surgery and my body was botched. I had a scar, like a huge scar from here to here, and having to see, a doctor, especially male doctors, and then they have, students who are learning, and then they ask you, can they look at it? And it's just like, I don't want to say no,
Hmm.
but I really don't want to say yes either. But I always say yes because I'm like, you know what, they're learning. It is what it is. But it is uncomfortable, like having to be poked and propped and always changing, and going for a CT scan, making sure I'm not wearing a bra with a wire so I can just go in, like little things like that. And that's one of the things, whenever I go to a CT scan, I always wear sweats and I make sure that there's no metal on them, and whatever bra I'm wearing, I'm making sure there's no wires in them, just so I don't have to change. um
Right.
it is comfortable, especially with your port. And I don't have a problem really with females as much as I do with the males. And I know it's a medical setting and it's very professional, but still,
Oh
it
yeah,
can be
yeah.
especially when people are touching here and here and here, and I feel like a lab rat. That's what I feel like. It's like uncomfortable, but so definitely I would feel like having, especially with me having that clinical trial now, having to kind of show my stomach. I don't want to be all out there with my whole belly showing, with my stretch marks and stuff and scars.
Hmm.
my chest. I don't want to be pulling it down and then, showing everybody all the gallons, you know? So,
No, I mean it's so real. It is. Um
and them helping you go have to use the bathroom. It's like, don't watch me. But then in the reality, it's like they have to
it's like,
because
don't let go of me. Let go of me. Don't let
I'm
go of me.
all.
Yeah. Don't trust anything I say, but I need you to trust me. It's and so like does the hospital, I mean, it's so weird to, I'm not blaming the hospital, but do they do enough? Like, yes, I mean, arguably, they get the job done, right? They're in there for medical stuff. They say, we have your blood work here, and here's your blank, blank, blank numbers. And you're like, oh, yeah, no, I totally understand. That makes sense. I have no idea. They're like, you have 14 white blood cell. And I'm like, good
That's
thing it
great.
wasn't 15,
I don't
like,
know. I'm like Googling, what's the normal white blood cell count?
right,
Google
exactly.
worst.
They tell you like don't look up anything on the internet, and you're like, I've been
But
doing
we
that the whole time. Of course, yeah. Like, oh my god,
do.
it's a scary place without having cancer. With cancer, it's a whole nother
It's
conversation.
scarier. Like you have 13% chance of living after 5 years. I'm like, no. Why did I Google? I'm
Why did
never
I?
Google.
Yeah.
What are liver enzyme levels? I'm like, you know what? I really need to stay away. My doctor
Hmm.
yelled at me because I'm like, doctor, and he's like, no. He's like, stop, get it off Google. That's not your job. That's my job. I'll tell you when you're in danger. I'm like, okay, but it's still hard.
Hmm. So do you feel like the hospitals do enough on that, like, I don't know how to say it, like almost like that hope side, or like being comfy and cute. Like, do they do enough to provide, how do we say it, like external services to the medicine specifically?
I feel like doctors have to be realistic
Hmm.
sometimes. They don't want to be like, yeah, you're gonna beat this and we're gonna do this. I feel like because they're doctors, they have to kind of show you the science behind it.
Hmm.
They don't like, oh, you're effed. They don't say that, or they don't tell you, yeah, you're gonna beat this, because like you said, they don't know. Like your body can react to something one day or 1 month, and then the next month it reacts completely different. So sometimes they can't give you enough information because they don't even know what's going to go on, and
Hmm.
they don't want to bring you down or give you a false promise. So I feel like it's kind of a tricky situation for them.
Hmm.
It's like, do they do enough? I mean, educating us, maybe not so much. Because I remember a doctor was like, yeah, and then we're going to biopsy your tumors, and if it's dead, and I'm like, I've never even heard of a tumor being dead. If it was dead, wouldn't it not be there? So, and it's like they don't explain a lot of things. That's what I feel like sometimes they do need more help with, is explaining a lot more. The chemo that you're taking or what they think that's going to happen and
Hmm.
what they're looking for, the good or the bad. I feel like they should be explaining it a lot more in human, like non-doctor terms.
Well, I was gonna say, do you think it would be helpful if, and like, kind of like I definitely understand what you're saying with the doctor, and I guess when I say hospital, I mean like, would it be helpful if they had, what's even like the, like, not therapists, but like, when you could like school, like middle schools and elementary schools have them. It's like they're not like a counselors, or advocates, or like.
They should.
Mhm. But the thing is, so okay, like they gave me an advocate, and they're like, she's one call away. I'm like, I don't know this person. Like, I'm trying to make light of my situation. Like, I need to look at this person in the eye, and like, when I make a joke, did they laugh? Because otherwise, this is very awkward. And like, I have questions that range from both like medical to like nutrition to like um community. How do I find a community? Or like sometimes I
Yeah.
think about hospitals, and like, you know the hospital I was at, they offered yoga, right? And I said to them, I was like, the last thing I want to do when I'm like at the hospital is work out, and they're like, oh no, it's yoga. And I'm like, nah, see, bending over, if my knee bends, we're working out. All right, like if I am getting up or down in any way and there's not like food involved, this is a workout. So I guess sometimes I do think about that, like, and that's where sort of like the murals come into play. Like, what can the hospital do to show me that it's like, it's not just a cancer experience, but it's a human experience. I'm being seen as someone with a range of not just physical problems, but emotional problems.
They should
I
have
got problems.
they should definitely have events, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Like how people places have events, even hospitals have events. Why don't they have events for cancer patients? Like, hey, age groups, this and this. Like, we're gonna be doing this. I mean, they do have like art, painting and all this, but I want to meet people. I want to talk to people. I want to have that, like you said, face to face experience because that's really how you want. I mean, I've met people online, um,
Hmm.
great people online that I get to talk to, and vent to, and and understands me and I understand them. But when you are going to a hospital and it's just a little different when you have somebody there physically that understands what you're going through. I definitely feel like having events would be helpful.
Hmm.
Um, and I mean, maybe quality food, snacks. I don't know, like little things like that. And
Snacks, yes.
snacks with sugar in it.
Yeah, I know, I know. Oh my God, it's so funny because like they would be like, "Do you want water?" And I was like, "No, I don't want water." And
I'm
it
like,
was just so many weird like not I didn't go to like a broke hospital, but I kind of felt like I was like, "Am I at a broke hospital?" Like are we struggling? Because they would be like, "You want a soda? There's a vending machine down the hall," and I'd be like, "Can we just
what?
have like?"
Isn't my $14,000 chemo session enough for you guys? I
Oh
think
my
that
God,
sodas.
right? Well, that's the thing is like you could totally charge me $50 more to have a bagel spread, at the like or just some kind of like, assortment of
Feed me before chemo. Yes, I would love that.
or like I think about this all the time, like massagers, just like little
No, but for
like
that isn't like that was a thing, and I think a lot of people. I mean, at least I know, like people don't know what to eat when they're on chemo or before chemo or what you can, and I feel like something like that would be helpful, like a diet or not a diet, like a you know what I mean, like a good or like assortment of food that would help you during chemo.
mhm.
That's something that they should really think about. It would be
Yeah.
helpful,
And
right?
I think that's the thing is like it's like I get that in some ways we become a number. They want us in and they want us out.
Yeah,
And but then it's like you're saying, like 7 hours travel time, the thousands of dollars and thousands of dollars. Like, do you have insurance? If that's a cool like,
of
or
course.
yeah. So
Yeah, no,
it's like without insurance. I mean, I've seen my numbers without insurance.
it's crazy.
Like,
It's like, I'm worth a lot. I'm almost worth $1 million, you guys. Just
I know.
I'm worth a lot of money.
I remember I like checked the app that I have for United and I like screenshot it and texted my family. I was like, I just hit the 500,000 mile mark or whatever it is. Like I'm
Right?
now, you know, I'm a valuable piece of ASS. So, but
It's true.
it's so weird because like that's the thing is like, every year for me even like and I'm in remission like the next few years I will always hit my copay or deductible or whatever it is like I will always so if you
Oh,
added like if the hospital just said here we're gonna tick another $100 onto your thing for like creative services and a couple snacks like and like a massage chair even if I had 30 minutes and I had to switch with the older people around me I would still do it or like like
that's funny.
can I rent a movie like
Oh, where I went, they had movies and stuff. And at MD Anderson, they did have snacks, but it really depends on the hospital you go to. But when you go to
mhm.
MSK New York, they don't. And I'm like, this is like one of the best hospitals. But it really, because they're so busy.
No
It's
I mean
so
that's yeah
in and out.
and that's where I feel um that's where I feel like creativity doesn't have to be, I mean, it's like we all like, we go to IKEA, I buy a fake plant. Like, like I go to Goodwill. Like, you guys could go to Goodwill and you could buy like something to make this not look like a medical room. And it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be this, that's the thing, is like, I know for me, like at the end of the day, these things, like, I wasn't expecting snacks. I wasn't expecting as fancy, like, what?
A light show.
Yeah, a light. So I wasn't expecting anything extra. Yes, there was no like post or like mid chemo rave that I was attending, but like I would have, to walk in and to see like a mural on the wall, or you get a pair of socks and they've got watermelons or popsicles or something like that. Like, it's
Yeah.
again, it's like just
Soft
these,
watermelons. Yes.
like, I don't want to always connect my cancer experience with pain, with emotional damage, like, and I think you said it earlier about like this, like, and this could go for all of humanity. I feel like trauma is so real, and
Yeah.
trauma is, it's not just from the scars, it's not just, it's from a big trauma. And because I don't feel like Bebop can, we're not slicing into people anytime soon, I promise. But what we hopefully can do is some of that emotional trauma. It's like, imagine you tell somebody, like, God, I hated going to the hospital today, but I love that mural. Or like, but oh my God, check out my socks. Like, that is not, I feel like hospitals are not so far from how they were probably 100 years ago. Maybe the medical stuff has changed, but I couldn't
Yeah.
imagine that decor has been this big, you know, how someone feels. And, I think that's really big. So, a couple questions to round it out. What would you say to someone who, you know, um, I guess just in general gets cancer, and then also a young person? How do you communicate? I know for me, I was like, oh, damn, this is strange,
Yeah.
because we can't use cuss words. I'm not sure if we can cuss. Well, I'll have to figure that out later.
I
But
don't know.
mhm.
Like, what would I say to somebody that just found out that they have cancer? Someone that
You get that message that's like, hey, I just got cancer. What would you say to them?
the first thing I would always say is it's okay to be sad, because
Mm,
people always assume, especially that I show this positive light and I'm always smiling, that you're supposed to be strong and powerful and happy. Like, no, be sad. Feel all your emotions, be angry at the world, and just kind of listen to your body. uh, a lot of people, when they first come into this, and get as much support as possible, once you go into the cancer world, you start losing friends, you start developing a new identity, because there was life before cancer and now there's life after cancer.
mhm,
And kind of just discovering yourself and just taking the time to figure out what's best for you. What's the best hospital? What's the best treatment for you? What's the best diet for you? Uh, things, those little things, they matter. But my number one thing I always tell people is, yeah, feel your emotions, all of them, good and bad, and you're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to be angry, but don't live there that long, you know, because life is short, and that's anybody's reality. You could walk out the house right now and get into the car and, God forbid, get into an accident. Just live each day in the moment. Don't worry about tomorrow, don't worry about the past, live for today, and just try to love on the people that love you.
mhm.
Show as much love as you possibly can. So that was what I would tell, and don't let it make you bitter. Let it make you better.
That's a line. You
So
got lines. These are bars. All right. Like,
I'm the
um,
new Kanye West.
oh my God. Not this podcast.
In
But like,
fact, I shouldn't have used Kanye. Maybe I should have used Drake.
thank you.
Drake's
Yes. I feel like
better bars. Yeah.
Drake understands. You know, he does.
I mean, I have an obsession with Hurricane and that whole Donda album. It came out when I was first diagnosed, so
Hmm.
that's why I always feel like when I think of bars, I always think of Kanye's Donda album.
There was like an emotion. Yeah, it's like I'm
Oh,
going. Oh
Hurricane,
yeah,
woof,
I
it gets into
had
feels.
the Kid Cudi like third album came out for me right when and like Kid
Is that
Cudi, he was
is that day
huge
and
for
night?
me. Uh,
I,
the well, it's like Man on the Moon 3, I guess, is,
yes,
but like in my depressive like 15, 16, 17s, like I was just headphones, Kid Cudi, I was there. And then it came out, yes. And I felt like I was like, yes, I can really feel this album right now. So I get that. I had not thought about that till you just said that. It's so funny. Like, um,
music does something for you.
yeah, so I mean, I'm trying to think like, we've kind of gone over your story, gone over like some of these hilarious but also totally serious complaints. Like the cancer experience, like you said, like don't be bitter, live full, but also like, I think there's so many levels to cancer. And I feel like that's what people don't get is that there's, you know, you can have a human experience and still have cancer, and
Yes,
that there's like, you know I know one of my big advice to people is to totally communicate. Like,
yeah,
people, they don't want to hear that you have cancer, they want to hear that you're happy and excited, but sometimes you got to
yes.
tell the people what's going on.
And most people are not going to still get it, even if you tell them. That's unfortunate. That's the reality that I've discovered. But,
Hmm.
sometimes people can only meet you where they can only meet themselves. So,
Mm.
sometimes communicating can hurt or help. It just depends who you communicate with, right?
Hmm. Do you
And I
have any? Oh, sorry.
that have cancer doesn't mean you can't live a normal life. You want to go out and hang out with your friends, go out, hang out with your friends. Don't let it stop you. You want to dress up and wear heels if you can, do it. Don't let that stop you. You don't have to look sick, and you don't have to act sick if you don't want to. And that was a big thing for me because people would always be like, well, shouldn't you be at home resting? And I'm like, shouldn't you just be minding your business? Like, this is what I enjoy. I like to get dressed up. I like to go out to dinner and I like to eat steak. So just do
That's,
what makes you happy,
hmm.
at the
And I
end of the
think that
day.
that's so real. I mean, and it's like like for me, I I don't care about getting dressed up. I'm learning to put clothes on because I work from home, so it's like a whole thing leaving my house. But like it's like but I find ways to live my life. And
Yeah.
when I tell people, they're like, "What have you been up to lately?" And I'm like, "Damn, well, here we go. This is you asked. You're about to get it. I know you didn't mean to, but here's the story." And it's like it's kind of like what you were saying earlier, like I didn't know you had cancer. It's
Yeah.
like I'm still Radwah, like I'm still living, you know?
Yeah.
And um I think that everything, like from your story, I'm gonna blow you up a little, like the courage that it takes to being a single mother, like I if you hadn't told me, I never would have known 7 hours of travel every few weeks. I never would have known that. I like what you've done on social media, creating a community. I just think like, you know, for what I'm doing, like you were able to be found. Your story was able to be told, and it's an amazing feat because I know how important relating to someone is. So, would let me ask you a question, like if someone is going through something similar or wanted to get in touch with you, is that something that you in your position, like you welcome those things, or is it like now you're
Like,
kind of like,
I love when people reach out to me,
mm-hmm,
through something similar that I'm going through, or if they have a family or friend. going through. I love that. I try to be here as much as possible for people. You know, please feel free to reach out to me. You know, as much as I possibly can, I'll answer. I answer as many people, and I feel like that's how you build a community, and that's how you kind of get ideas from one another and help from one another. Because at the end of the day, we can't I can't do this by myself, and I know other people. And how I got better and how I felt better wasn't because of me talking to family and friends. It was me getting into contact with other people who have gone through this or are going through this. So
Hmm.
I always feel like it's great to always lend a helping hand and try to, build with each other and communicate with each other, and because no one's really going to get what you're going through unless they're going through what you're going through. So, yeah,
Right.
no, people, please feel free to reach out.
It's so cool to hear. It's like I love the cancer community in some ways because it's like it's very real, and if you can break that mold of like I don't want to talk about it, there are a ton of people who want to talk about it with you. You know.
Yeah. I'll have people who don't, a lot of people don't, like, friends and family, and they don't post it on social media, and they'll reach out to me and they're like, thank you for giving me the courage. For some reason, I feel like people sometimes are embarrassed about it.
What do you mean?
Maybe that, not embarrassed, but like, not embarrassed, but let me use a better term.
Hmm.
Kind of just, they don't want the empathy or the boo hoo, I guess, of it, is what I wanted to say. And I get that. I
Hmm.
completely understand that, because sometimes when you do tell people, like I said, it's that negative energy. But I feel like when they communicate with me and they feel more open to talk to people about it, it makes me happy, because we should talk about this more. We should, unfortunately normalize it, because it's happening so often,
Right.
especially with people our age.
Hmm.
And because when they think cancer, they think, you only an 80-year-old can get it.
Hmm.
So,
So real.
right, different lifestyle, different things,
Yeah,
babe.
and I think such a resounding message of this conversation is like you have to live your life, and you deserve to live your life. And um, I can't say it enough how the more I do this, the more I just realize like it's about continuing to having your own experience and not being like weighed down by, well, this is cancer, you know.
Yeah,
So I appreciate it a lot. Like, how I always feel like I like slightly hound people, but I'm like so stoked that we are here doing this. Like, it is like I think it's going to be really cool in a year when I get you to do this again with me and we're like in person in some lounge, like that, because that's the vision, right?
yes,
Yeah.
I'm
And
excited.
then, yes. So, I just want to thank you. Um, we will definitely talk soon. For anyone listening, I'll work on the outro. Don't get me wrong, but we'll be on Spotify, and shout out to our unofficial sponsors of Coca Cola, Pepsi, no, of like the
Speak
biggest.
in.
Yeah, shout out to MD Anderson, MSK. Was that it?
Yes.
MSK, Piedmont Cancer Institute, that was me, and currently at Moffitt in Tampa. So shout out to y'all. Thanks. And we'll drop all the social medias, social, it's a plural, social media in the descriptions, and there will be more episodes coming. This is a very grassroots thing, and we hope to build and expand. And just thank you again for coming on the show. So I really
Thank you so
appreciate
much.
it.
Great. No,
Yeah,
seriously, I had time. Thank you.
awesome. All right, well, I will talk to you soon.
All right, sounds good. Bye.
Bye.